Everyone thought they knew what greatness looked like. More medals, more records, more impossible flips that didn't seem human anymore.
So when the greatest gymnast on earth stepped away from Olympic competition in front of millions, the world reached a quick conclusion. She quit. What if almost everything people believed about that moment was wrong? What if the biggest victory of Simone Biles' life began the instant she walked away from gold? That's the part almost nobody tells you, because this story isn't really about gymnastics. If you're into true stories that completely change the way you see history and the people behind it, you're in the right place. Now let's see how a little girl from Ohio ended up carrying the weight of an entire nation before she became the face of American gymnastics. It's about what happens when perfection becomes a prison. Every routine had to be flawless. And trust me, you don't want to find yourself inside one. Before she became the face of American gymnastics, Simone Ariane Biles entered the world on March 14, 1997, in Columbus, Ohio, with no hint that history was waiting. Her early years weren't filled with trophies or standing ovations. They were filled with uncertainty.
Her birth mother struggled with addiction, leaving Simone and her siblings in an unstable home where tomorrow never felt guaranteed. She didn't lose a gymnastics competition. She almost lost something much more important: a stable childhood. Eventually, they entered foster care. But here's what's crazy. None of that would become the hardest battle she'd ever face. Before the Olympic arenas, there were social workers, foster homes, packed bags, and nights when tomorrow wasn't certain. Before she learned how to fly through the air, she had to learn something much harder: how to live without knowing where she'd sleep next. Then came the turning point. Her maternal grandfather, Ron Biles, and his wife, Nell, stepped in, adopting Simone and her younger sister, while other relatives adopted her older siblings. It wasn't a fairy tale overnight, but for the first time, stability replaced chaos. Funny thing is, history usually changes when nobody notices. One school field trip to a gymnastics center changed everything. While other children followed instructions, Simone couldn't resist trying skills beyond her level. A coach noticed immediately: not good, not talented, different. That single observation quietly altered the future of American sports. But raw talent is cheap. Plenty of gifted children disappear before anyone remembers their names. The real question was whether this little girl could survive everything that success would demand. And believe me, the hardest part hadn't even begun yet.
At first glance, Simone Biles didn't look like someone who would change sports forever. She stood just 4 feet 8 inches tall. Then she leapt the ground. The first thing people noticed about Simone Biles wasn't her size, it was what she could do with it. Standing just 4 feet 8 inches tall, she generated explosive power that seemed to defy physics. Coaches could teach technique, they could polish routines, but they couldn't manufacture the explosive power that seemed almost impossible for someone her size. She wasn't just performing gymnastics, she was rewriting its limits. And here's where people often get it wrong. They think champions are born the moment they win. They're not. Champions are built in thousands of lonely mornings when nobody is watching. While most teenagers worried about school dances or Friday night football, Simone's life revolved around repetitions, sore muscles, and tiny corrections that most people would never notice. One mistake could erase years of work. That's a terrifying way to grow up, yet she kept showing up. Then came 2013. At just 16 years old, Simone won her first all-around title at the World Championships. The gymnastics world suddenly realized they weren't watching another promising athlete. They were witnessing the arrival of someone extraordinary. One world title became another, then another. Soon her routines included skills so difficult that other elite gymnasts hesitated to attempt them. Some of those elements would eventually carry her name in the official code of points, a rare honor reserved for athletes who successfully perform entirely new skills in international competition. Only a handful of gymnasts in history have ever achieved that distinction.
Think about that for a second. She wasn't just winning the game, she was changing its rule book. Then Rio 2016 arrived, and America watched history unfold. 4 Olympic gold medals, 1 bronze, a smile that lit up arenas. It looked effortless on television. It wasn't. Every perfect landing hid years of bruises, pressure, and expectations growing heavier with every victory. Every routine demanded perfection because one small mistake could become the only thing the world remembered. Success has a strange habit of becoming a trap. The more Simone won, the less the world celebrated her victories, and the more it expected them. Suddenly, gold wasn't extraordinary anymore. It was simply the minimum. Imagine carrying that weight every single time you stepped onto the mat. Because the next challenge wasn't another competitor. It was something no one, not even Simone, could see coming. For the first time in her life, Simone Biles was about to face an opponent she couldn't out-train, out-jump, or outwork. And when it arrived, no amount of talent would be enough.
By the time the Tokyo Olympics finally arrived in 2021, after a year-long pandemic delay, Simone Biles wasn't just representing Team USA, she had become the face of the Games. Television networks built promotions around her. Sponsors celebrated her. Headlines asked not whether she would win, but how many gold medals she would take home. Every camera seemed to follow her every move. Every performance carried the weight of a nation's expectations. Think about that for a moment. When the entire world expects perfection, even excellence can start to feel like failure. That's a dangerous place for any human being to live. But beneath the confidence the cameras captured, another story was unfolding. Years earlier, Simone had revealed that she was among the athletes abused by former USA gymnastics team doctor Larry Nassar, a man who exploited the trust placed in him by hundreds of young women and girls. She chose to speak publicly, demanding accountability from the institutions that had failed to protect athletes. She could have stayed silent. Instead, she risked criticism to tell the truth. That decision required a different kind of courage, one that couldn't be measured by medals. Yet life kept moving, and so did expectations. Then, during the Olympic team final, something terrifying happened. Simone experienced what gymnasts call the twisties. It sounds harmless. It isn't. In the air, a gymnast suddenly loses the ability to sense where their body is in space. Imagine driving down a highway and without warning forgetting which way is up. Now imagine making that mistake while flipping several meters above the ground with only a split second to land safely. At the speeds and heights involved in elite gymnastics, that confusion can lead to catastrophic injury. This wasn't fear. It wasn't a lack of effort. It was a genuine loss of spatial awareness, and continuing could have placed her life and long-term health at serious risk. But most people watching at home couldn't see any of that. They only saw an athlete stepping away. Still, millions of viewers didn't know that in real time. Social media exploded. Some called her brave. Others accused her of letting her country down. The internet reached its verdict long before it knew the full story. The loudest voices often belonged to people who had never stood on a balance beam, let alone risked their lives flipping several meters above the ground. But Simone now faced a choice unlike any she had encountered before. Chase another gold medal or protect herself, knowing the world might never forgive her. For an athlete whose entire life had been built on pushing through pain, walking away may have been the hardest routine she ever performed. In just a few seconds, she would make a decision that would redefine what strength actually means. And years later, people would still be debating whether it was the bravest decision in Olympic history. And that's where this story takes its most unexpected turn.
When Simone Biles stepped away from the Olympic team final, the reaction was immediate. Some praised her, others questioned her commitment. A few even declared that her legacy had been ruined. The internet had already decided the ending of her story. It just turned out to be wrong. It's wild how quickly the world can rewrite someone's story. One day you're the greatest athlete alive. The next, strangers who have never met you believe they know your character. But history has a funny way of rewarding patience instead of hot takes. In the days that followed, Simone focused on something she had spent her entire life helping others admire: her own health. As the twisties gradually improved, she returned for one final event, the balance beam final. There were no impossible skills, no desperate attempt to silence critics, just a carefully constructed routine that reflected what her body could safely perform. It wasn't the hardest routine she'd ever performed. It may have been the bravest. She earned a bronze medal. To many people, bronze looked like a step down. In reality, it represented something far greater. It was proof that courage isn't always about pushing harder. Sometimes it's about knowing your limits and refusing to let pride make the decision for you. The years that followed reshaped the conversation. Instead of being remembered only for medals, Simone became one of the most influential voices advocating for athlete well-being and mental health. Then came another chapter that surprised anyone who thought her story had ended. At the 2023 World Championships, she returned to the top, winning multiple gold medals and becoming the most decorated gymnast in World Championship history. And at the 2024 Paris Olympics, she reminded the world exactly who she was, helping Team USA win team gold and adding more Olympic medals to an already legendary career. The same athlete some people believed was finished had climbed back to the top of the sport. The comeback wasn't just athletic, it was deeply personal. She had proven something that no score could ever measure. Remember how this story began? The world thought Simone Biles walked away from greatness. The strongest people aren't the ones who never stumble. They're the ones who know when to stop, heal, and rise again. That's why the title of this story isn't a trick. Simone Biles really did say no to Olympic gold. But in doing so, she won something bigger: the freedom to define success on her own terms, the respect of countless athletes who saw themselves in her decision, and a legacy that reaches far beyond gymnastics. Because long after medals are locked away in display cases, character is what history remembers. And maybe that's the greatest victory Simone Biles ever achieved. Not the medals she won, but the millions of people she gave permission to believe that protecting yourself is never the same as giving up. And sometimes the bravest move isn't taking the leap. Sometimes it's having the courage to step back so you can rise higher than anyone thought possible.